think it's going to be very interesting to see how everyone generally reacts to this chapter. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of confliction, a lot of altering perspectives and guilt, a lot of different things. And with the process of going through each individual character, their emotion, their perspective, and their response to other characters and even themselves, what they admit to and what they kind of propose, this chapter opens up a massive line of dialogue. It uses a lot of dialogue as well, but it opens up a conversation. For a while I've talked about stepping stones, things that would slowly line up and take place to hopefully lead to a conversation, which that conversation, where it goes, could literally be anywhere. It could reach a dead end, or it could spin off into something entirely new, a future that is bright, a future that is potentially better, a future that lives. These stepping stones have come very far and few between. They're very slow and methodical but meticulous, very detailed, very intelligently placed and structured to allow you to feel for so many different characters that are polar opposites to one another, that conflict with one another, that hate one another, yet they slowly start to understand one another. Even some of the more stubborn people within this chapter really see that through conversation and through actions can change a perspective, can change the understanding of the other person to a very portional degree. It's not full forgiveness. It's not a let bygones be bygones, but it is a very small step forward to that potential conversation. The structure of this chapter was beautiful. I feel a lot of people are going to be rather conflicted about it just because of everything that's going on, just with the direction that it's going. There's always going to be an abundance of people that really don't like where it's going. We're still obviously up in the air with what to expect for the ending of the story. We don't know what's going to happen to Eren, what outcome or action is going to take place. We don't know how much is going to be destroyed. But this chapter closes the walls in a little bit more. It focuses on the humanity of people, the will to live, the will to fight with one another against a much bigger threat. With how progressive this chapter is, a lot of questions that you may have towards Marleyans and Eldians working together, and even the future for them and even the rest of the world to some degree, really starts to take shape. This was probably one of the biggest things that we were extremely unsure about. If Eren doesn't destroy the world, what would happen? Would Marley just obliterate Paradise and Eldians off the face of the earth? Would other people start to come into the picture and want to push Marley, even if they didn't want to for some reason, to obliterate Paradise off the face of the earth? We have that conversation in this chapter. How would Marley respond to all of this? How would the rest of the world respond to all of this? How long could they last out within Paradise, within their own structure, their own confinement, if Eren doesn't succeed? They also talk about the other version of this, the thing they're currently building up against and joining forces to stop, the mass genocide of the entirety of the planet. Eren killing billions upon billions of people. This is something that no one wants, and as much as they're conflicted and they hate one another, there is a common goal there. There is a common want. They also address the history between Marleyans and Eldians, very portionally, but it's very powerful. It's impactful within the conversations that they have. They're addressing a lot of questions that people had. How would Marleyans react? How would Marley and the politics side of it react? Why would they want to push forward in trying to create some sort of peace with Eldians? General Magath may only be one person, but he's a powerful one. He's a stubborn one too. And to see how stubborn he was throughout this chapter, only by the end of it to somewhat have his eyes open, to see the bigger picture, to understand other people's point of views. He still questions it, he still gets emotional about it, yet the stubbornness that he had at the beginning of the chapter, talking with everyone and confronting them in such a concretely tight type of way, by the end of it he's somewhat let go of it. He's seen an action by Gabby. While Jean and Reiner get into this massive argument and this fight over Marco, funny enough, bringing up old things and accepting things, guilt, etc., people get a little bit feisty, they get a little bit angry, and Jean actually attacks Reiner rather heavily. But the person to come in to cover him, to shield him, is Gabby, and for General Magath to see that is somewhat what opens his eyes, that Gabby is willing to do that, not fight back, but to take the beating for Reiner. And from that she goes to this this very sincere and deep apology. Witnessing that was important. For me personally, that was one of the most impactful moments of the chapter. Seeing how truly and wholeheartedly sorry Gabby was, begging for forgiveness, something that General Magath hasn't really seen before. But this is a soldier from Mali. This is someone that once hated Eldians to her core, as she admits, to now wanting to work with them, to understanding with them, to even enjoying their company and liking them. She has a lot of respect for her quote-unquote substitute family that was taking care of her on Paradise. For me, she was very impactful, and she created this extremely powerful conclusion for emotion and for the conversations themselves to reach this nice endpoint to a certain degree. It was a beautiful place to use her as this child that was raised in Mali, that hated Eldians, that has now converted sides and understands and sees the bigger picture. Someone that is a lot more pure than everyone here. Someone that is no longer tainted by these conflicting ideologies and these burdens of hatred. She sees the grand scheme of things now, and one by one other people are slowly joining that by witnessing her, and it's somewhat of a mob mentality that can take place. Not to say that every single person within Mali would do the same if they saw it, but for someone like General Magath, that's a very interesting way to showcase that. He's probably one of the most stubborn persons you could find in Mali, so for his eyes to be somewhat open to a certain degree, with how he was at the beginning of the chapter to what he was at the end of it, is incredible, and sparks up that stepping stone, that conversation that with this entirety of a chapter and the emotion that was going through it, there's a lot of things that can take place from here. All the questions and all the concerns we had towards Mali and Eldians and Paradise, all the problems with the history and the confliction and the circle of hatred and what would happen potentially in the future. Would Mali just obliterate them? Would Eren continue to obliterate them? How would these regular people within here coexist with one another with so much negative connotation behind it, with so much history, with so much hatred towards one another? How would they accept and potentially move forward? This chapter answers pretty much every single question you could have for that, and it showcases very small versions of it. Does this mean it's going to 100% happen? No, but the stepping stone has gotten a lot bigger. It has become a possibility now that a future where Malians and Eldians can coexist could actually be a thing. Even with all of this beautiful character interaction, you get some very personifiable moments. So many characters getting this shed of spotlight over them. Hanji got a beautiful bit at the beginning. Mikasa got a little bit of reinforcement from Annie and what they're going to do with the approach towards Eren, and they even dictate what might be the outcome for Eren if it comes down to it, how they will conflict with one another if they can't choose to do one thing or this thing. Instead, they have to go with this, which is obviously killing Eren, which is the last thing that they want to do, which brings up the whole Mikasa is going to play probably a very massive emotional role to Eren. When you look back throughout the story, the person that would pretty much always be there for Eren and snap him out of these very weird states of mind that he would be in would be Mikasa. Now, it's not to say that she's going to 100% get through to him, but Eren pushing her away quite a while ago makes me a little bit more confident in saying that Eren himself is probably scared of Mikasa, because if it's anyone that could get through to him to some degree, to connect with him or snap him out of whatever state he may be in, or at least make him see a bit of reason, a bit of truth, a bit of understanding, it would probably be Mikasa. But Mikasa can't get there by herself, and I think that's where Armin comes into the picture as well. Armin has that exact same role or position as Mikasa has as well, in terms of emotionally connecting with Eren, but I put Mikasa on a little bit of a higher pedestal, not too much, but just with how Eren has always reacted to her, how he's always treated her, and how he was very prominent in getting rid of her out of his life a very long time ago. So I feel the importance of that moment, if it ever were to come down to it, would fall onto Mikasa, thanks to Armin helping her get to that position. Or hell, maybe they both go in there, I'm not entirely sure. Seeing that come to fruition obviously brings in a lot of different questions for the future of Eren. 100% convince him to turn around or to stop everything he's doing? Probably not. I think a lot of things are already set in motion, and it'd probably be extremely difficult to just end everything. It's a little anticlimactic too if you think about it. So what does happen? I'm still kind of stuck on the idea that Eren's going to be stuck within this place, Ymir's place or whatever, or he's going to reside within there. Doesn't really count as him dying, but even though Titan Shifters go to that place when they die, so technically he kind of does die, but you know, it's not like a death, but it kind of is. It's a little bit odd, but I'm very fond of that idea at the moment. It works well with the Mikasa situation, works well with the beginning of chapter 1, with Mikasa saying goodbye goodbye to Eren in a dreamlike state, and that dreamlike state being connected to the paths and the future, it would make sense that it takes place somewhere within that realm. And Mikasa is saying goodbye to Eren because he's stuck in there now. He's going to replace Ymir that was originally in there because he set her free, and he's going to uphold that place. It's rather ironic that he set everything in motion. He potentially set his own people free. This chapter helps dictate and understand Marleyans and Eldians potentially moving forward with their hatred and breaking out of the cycle of hatred because of Eren. But at the end of all of it, the person that doesn't get the true freedom is Eren himself. It's extremely tragic and ironic, but it can be very impactful and beautifully done. Seeing him stuck in that place, mind you, where his father and even the jaw-tied Ymir supposedly is, as they went there when they passed away. That place is also known as freedom. It's not the true freedom that Eren was looking for, but he basically let his people free, and he is now in control of all the power but can't do anything with it. Calls back all the Titan shifting abilities, etc, etc. The power of Ymir that he probably has because he's replaced her, so he's got the power of the founding Titan in its entirety to some degree, probably not to the fullest extent, but I imagine it's a massive power that he has, and you have yourself somewhat of a proxy conclusion. Will this happen? I honestly don't know. It's me just spitballing, but with everything that's going at the moment with this chapter and how it pushes forward the idea of breaking out of the circle of hatred and the continuation of the human race in itself and understanding each other and working with each other, Marleyans and Eldians, there is that stepping stone and conversation to be had. As much as people may not like it, it's been teased for a very long time, and I personally have been talking about it for a very long time. I myself was even nervous if we were actually even going to get a chapter like this that would help lead into that idea even further, but I'm extremely glad we did. They end off this incredible chapter with a problem. They currently can't do the plan that they had in motion, which was to go to the harbor and get some airboats, as they called them, which is just planes, to allow them to look for the founding Titan, to look for Eren and spot him out of everything, where he's going, what direction, etc, etc. Which I thought was a little bit weird, just because I thought Eren was stuck in one place because he was so massive. Is he moving now? I don't know. How long is his body going to be is a real question, because I generally thought he was stuck there, but the way they explain it, it seems like he's kind of moving, unless they want to use the plane to not only spot Eren, but to give coordinates back to everyone else on where the Wall Titans are, how far they've progressed, etc, etc, which gives them some sort of a proxy time limit, which would make a lot of sense. However, that doesn't actually go through. At the harbor, we have Flock and a bunch of Jaegers that are on standby, waiting for people to attack. They're pretty much waiting for everyone within this chapter to rock up, and war is about to go down, or convincing is about to go down. Probably a bit of both, I assume. Flock is pretty hard-headed at the moment with the whole backing of Eren Yeager and the Jaegerists in general, so it's going to be very interesting to see if they talk to one another, but there probably will be a little bit of bloodshed there, if not quite a bit. The super squad right now that we have is extremely powerful, however, even though they've had this somewhat campfire bonding session with, mind you, they also have Yelena in there, who's kind of like an anomaly, but we find out a lot about her being a very generic quote-unquote Marleyan in total, which really puts the conclusion of the story in perspective. That even Yelena, character that came in rather late into the story, is finally getting a lot of backbone for her. We're really ticking all the boxes for all of these characters and allowing a lot more of a bigger conversation to be had. This chapter was 100% needed and has opened up so many different doors, or at least unlocked so many doors that we've already known about for an extremely long time. Where we go from here with all of this information regarding theories isn't going to be entirely new or groundbreaking, but it allows you to create a better picture, paint a better picture. And maybe people will start seeing that the possibility of Marleyans and Eldians and this whole circle of hatred and even the rest of the world, them coexisting with one another is definitely a possibility, because that was the biggest thing that people could not come to terms with or even fathom. A lot of people will not like that, and it's definitely not going to come easy. It's not something that they're just going to forgive and move on from. There's work that goes into that, there's effort, there's the desire to live. So with that being said, that is basically it. This chapter was incredible. I personally really enjoyed it, but I would love to know what you think. Did you love the chapter? Did you hate it? Let me know your thoughts. But I'm actually going to end the video here. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.